Okay, thank you for those who have come. For those of you who are watching this on video, I will make some notes. Just to answer a quick question, do we have a tech report template? No, not a tech report template, Stefan. What I have suggested is this. In the FAQ, the best, in the coursework itself, right, you have a bunch of constraints, and these constraints will play. Yeah, excellent. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Then I don't really need to perhaps, it's not a drop-in. No, it's not a drop-in in the sense that we've got breakout rooms. This is a Q&A. So if you've got all your broad answers and you want to just scan over it, don't worry about being here. This might be the last Q&A I do, depending on demand, but there are 50 to 60 of you here, and I hope that you'll find these general points and you can raise general points. The drop-ins are only over the same times as practicals, and that's on that separate sheet that I distributed. So no, it's not a drop-in. There's no one-to-one in this, but you can ask general questions if you feel. I won't necessarily take the whole 50 minutes either, because unless there's a huge demand for questions and they need some clarification, then I won't waste your time. I've got a bunch of questions which I'd like to get through quickly. Yes, you do. Stefan, there, that sheet is the drop-in sheet is there. I've just updated it for week number 2, and there'll be one for week number 3 as well, because your deadline, let's go through some basics. Okay, so updated deadline. So can anyone tell me, have they received an email about, yes, you have. Okay, is that from me or is that from the university? We did from you. Okay, that's cool. So essentially, if you look at the coursework, I've added the 5 days automatically onto it. So the deadline is now the 20th of May. Okay, the only issue we will have is that teaching classes all stop on the week beginning the whatever the week after next is. What's the week beginning? Next week starts on the 6th, so it's the week after that. And so those weeks will be drop-ins as well. But then after that, yeah. So yes, it's not 10, it is 5 working days. That's what we've given you. So if you look at it, our original deadline was the 13th, which was a Thursday. So I added 5 working days to that, and I've made it the 20th. Okay, so in that week, you're basically, if there are people, and there will be some people with last minute panics and all the rest of it, currently there's no teaching in that week because that's officially an exam week. So the next 2 weeks will be drop-ins in the practicals. Please come along, sign the sheet, don't. Okay, so let's just very briefly just emphasize this. Sorry to sound like a broken record. For the drop-ins, oh, come on. For the drop-in, please don't just turn up and sign the sheet. The reason I say that is because it's a very busy time for us. No, there isn't a limit. Kathleen, the logic is this, that I'm using it to work out whether we need more or fewer staff. So this week, a couple of days were very light. So I was able to it's a very busy period for everyone, as you can imagine. People are marking, preparing exams and all the rest of it. And they don't want to just come to a practical if there are only a handful of students. So I'm trying to judge and balance the 2 elements up. If it's a very busy session, then we'll have 4 members of staff. The minimum we will always have will be Manny, me, Peter, and Uchenna, depending on which sessions they come. Those 4 are going to be your markers. So me and 3 others. And it's important that we do all the support. So we give you consistent replies and we're consistent with each other. And if there's any kind of, issue, Alla's not marking, Alex isn't, and Matthew aren't marking, and neither is Simon. So I've kind of let them take a secondary role in this period, but I will draw on them if we have masses of people who have questions. Okay, so don't turn up sign sheets. It helps me balance up all the work related stuff. I am recording this, so I'm going to be very, very quick in going through stuff because you can always go back through it. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. That's okay. Don't worry if you put your name down, you didn't turn up. We're not going to punish you for it. It is helpful if you can just scrub your name from it and you know you can't make it. That's not a problem. Please do that if you're able to. Okay, so I have some questions that came up this week. One of them was a question, and I suspect most of you know the answer to this one. Worksheet for week 7. And the question was, is there a worksheet? No, there isn't. And just to emphasize, for those of you who are looking for a start, okay, hang on a sec, Bart. Let me make a note of your question about the last session. We'll have a look at the calendar and I'll explain all that to you in a sec. Okay, no, actually, I'll explain it now. Let's just get a calendar up very, very quickly. Switch accounts and have a look at my calendar. Okay, so if you look at my calendar, next week, as you can see, Monday is completely, the gray are the programming sessions. 10th, the week beginning the 10th is the last one, okay? So we have last week of drop-ins is week beginning 10th. Now, that's the last week of official drop-in. Well, and I'll just see how people are doing and we'll chat about it. So you've got the next 2 weeks. In the video, do we have to demonstrate all of the menu options? Okay, so yeah, let me put questions in. Video demo question. Okay, so the video demo question Yanis has just asked is, do you have to demonstrate all of your menu options? Demonstrate all your functionality. Okay, that's the point of the video demonstration. Okay, so think of it like this, right? I want to make the assessment process as fair as possible to you. That we got help from another student. Could you please elaborate? Yeah, Christina, I'll come back to that in a sec. I want you to demonstrate all your functionality, and I want your tech report to use the constraints and then for your decisions, your coding decisions. I've been talking to the team about this question about the help. Okay, help. Right, so I said you had to put a little note somewhere that we got help from another student. Could you please elaborate what you mean by that? Do we need to add a note if we get help from another in terms of finding a solution to an error? Okay, if we get help, let's clarify this point entirely. What kind of help should you document? Right, just to pick up Christina's general point, and it's probably quite an important question. If you get help, if you're, say you come and see us or you chat to your friends and they talk and they discuss and they help you work a solution out, you don't have to reference that. That's just part of the natural way that you would work, I would hope. If someone comes along and codes a paragraph, or you grab a paragraph of code from someone and you don't write it yourself, but you just insert it, or they write it for you, you definitely have to document that. What's really critical for us is that you don't take credit for code that isn't yours. If you work with someone, make sure you assimilate the code. I'll give you a very good example. I had a worksheet student, and it became really obvious after just chatting to the worksheet student, didn't understand their own code. So I said, how come you don't understand your own code? And they said, oh, a friend helped me. Friend helped me is probably the most overused euphemism given to us. Okay, it generally means that someone did your work for you. If a friend helped you, that's fine, but you have to own it, right? Okay, you have to own it. So hang on a second, Mark. I don't want to rush through. I want to get your questions in. If a friend helped you, absolutely fine. If 3 or 4 you sat down together and you all hammered out a version of the code, but then you went away from it, you renamed the variables, you renamed the methods, you made adjustments to make sure that you were confident with the code, then that code belongs to you. It is a tricky one, right? It is a tricky one because at this level in a first year, of course, lots of your code will look very similar. So we're not hunting for people to look for plagiarism, but we are not keen on students getting help and not acknowledging it. So what I would say is that the best way to deal with it is to actually explicitly state if you had a significant amount of help rather than us get suspicious or have to struggle, because this is the rule we're going to implement, okay? In the marking process, grading marking process, if we doubt this is your work, right? And let's talk about how we might, and I don't want to make too much a big deal about this. This is your work, and we won't be seeking it, but we had a conversation about this today, the 4 of us, Peter and I mainly. If we doubt this is your work, what we're going to do is invite you into a Zoom meeting with me to go through it, right? I choose a snippet of 3,000 lines from a friend on Stack Overflow. Yeah, okay, got you. Right. See why your conditional doesn't work, doesn't need. No, Robert, that's absolutely fine. Look, it would be stupid for me to say you can't talk to each other, you can't give each other help. I want you to own your code, okay? We're talking about last year, I think out of 300, almost 400 students, there were only 4 students who really significantly fell into this trap, and it was really obvious. It's those who don't do the work, copy the code. I'll give you the example they did. They literally copied someone else's code, including their comments. So it was very obvious. This year is trickier for us because 4 of us are marking. So our rule is if we doubt this is your work, i.e. if in your tech report, it's generic, if your tech report is waffly and doesn't really actually say, I made this decision to code this in this way, and doesn't have that precision, that raises suspicion that you're not actually aware of what your code does. Do you see what I mean? So use your tech report to own your work, use your video to own your work, and it should not be a problem, right? That, I hope that clarifies the question. Okay, so we had another couple of other questions that came, and I have also questions, had excellent ones by Alex Crowley earlier, which I just want to mention in here, and I'll do that in a sec. Does the video have to be a certain length? There is a 2 to 3 minute, I think, limit on it. If you look at the coursework, where is it? Here's the coursework. Let's have a quick look. I thought I would just drag it into here so we could always be sure. Video demonstration, 2 to 3 minutes. For 2 to 3 minutes, that's not a huge amount of time. You don't have, if you're going to do all that, let's say house options, room options, device plug options, and system options, you might think I'll run out of time. So make a sensible decision. I mean, if you're doing just, you can, how can I put it? If you've got on and off, right, for a house option, and you've done all the way through to all your systems options, and you think, oh, I can't squeeze it all in, then just maybe pick 1 or 2 from the house options, or 1 from the house options and move on to the other, because they're similar enough. And I think that won't necessarily be a problem. You could literally say, here's my code, and flick to the code window to show the switch off for, say, the house options. And it's obvious to us that it worked, you know, it's there and there's not a problem. 2 to 3 minutes. If it goes over 4 minutes, I think we'll have a problem. Okay, with a video demo, do we need to try to break it or just show the functionality using the correct input? Absolutely don't try to break it. It's unfair to expect you to break it. I'll tell you why. Because one of the constraints we have is this, there. The reason that exception handling is not required is because we are assuming good input throughout, which means in your video demonstration, assume good input. Assume that your input is all correct. So if you've got number input, you don't have to demonstrate to us. This is why it's not required, right? We don't need to see it in the demo. If you put it in your code to help your code, careful you don't over talk about it, because, you know, if you're trying to say, yeah, actually it wasn't required, but I ended up spending every line of code, every other line of code protects it against bad input, but we're saying explicitly assume good input, okay? Right, so I just, anyway, so something like ours, yeah, we said that does, let me, good. Can I understand my own code after 3 days? I don't know. I mean, Catalin, if I was a student and I'd been given this, My attitude would be, just make sure I own it. I'm confident enough with what I'm submitting, and I can take responsibility for it. You know, we have usually have a statement you have to tick to say, the work I'm submitting is mine. And I might encourage you to think in that way, although I haven't added that to the submission link, but it's kind of implicit. Do we need to try to break the code in the, no, I'll just answer that. No, you don't, because we are assuming good input throughout. So we won't be looking for you to break it, okay? Good input expects, so I don't think you need that. That's really right. Well, in theory, it won't be hard to break since it expects correct input. Yeah. If you have 4 options, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you're testing it and say, I'm going to show 5 just to show it won't let me do 5, we don't care if it doesn't let it show 5, right? We want to see the proper functionality working, if you see what I mean. Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you. So with the video, just demonstrate correct inputs and the other functions of the program. Absolutely. And one thing that Peter and I were talking about today to encourage you to help our grading process is if in your video, as you go through it, you really are proud of a piece. Let me write this. If you're really proud and pleased, really proud of some code that you wrote, then feel free to show it and make sure you emphasize that. And you can even emphasize that in your videos. So okay. So you might say, look, I put a lot of thought into this and I just want to, yes, exactly. Hang on, Adriana, let me answer that. If you're really proud of some code, then show it, okay, in the video. You know, let it be easy for us to say, wow, they're really proud of it. They've reflected it in their, okay, so Adriano says, by good input, do we mean correct types of input? Don't put strings when it asks int, or valid input, don't put an ID of a plug which does not exist, or both. Okay, you've phrased it really well, Adriano. So I'm going to copy your text. Okay, where did I put input? Okay. What do I mean by good input? And this is this. Okay, let me just put this in here because that's. Let me just emphasize this. By good input, do we mean correct type, don't put, or valid? Both. So the answer to that is we mean both. Okay, so if it's expecting an int, you've given them an option, we expect you only to select the relevant option. If it's a, don't put a string, we're not worried about the string if it's asking for an int. Okay, hopefully that's clear. So if it's some really janky code and we just say we're proud, will that help? Yeah. What I want to do is just give you a chance for us to give you a positive grading experience. So we can say they're really proud of it. They put a lot of thought. There's not an objective question here, it's a subjective valuation that we want to acknowledge it in some way. Okay, let me get back to my list. Let me say, not show it, but say feel free to show it in the video. Okay, so good question again. Thank you very much for that, Adriano. Do we mean, hang on. No, why are you messing up? That's because I've got that in a separate line. Okay. I'm just going to do it so these notes are hopefully readable or legible or coherent after the session. By correct types of input, correct types of input, type of inputs. I think the grammar's the wrong way around, but anyway, I'll fuss about the grammar later. We mean both, okay? Right, next question. Sorry, you had a question, I think, both Adriano. Yes, that's exactly right. Does the toggle status need to be a Boolean if both the input and output has to be on off? I'm not sure I follow that. Toggle just means if it's off, you turn it on. If it's on, it turns it off. Yeah. Yeah, for the, yeah, I'm not sure. If Robert, you're responding to Ihab's, feel free just to turn your microphone off and just chat. Say it out loud, Ihab, if you want to. Because I'm not sure I understand it. Okay, so I have some questions that came up. What came up? Yeah, the deadline we've mentioned. No, so there is no, obviously there's no worksheet because it's part of your coursework. I meant, does it need to be a Boolean or can it be a string? No, please don't use strings for on off. That's what we call, everyone would say to you, that's bad practice, right? That's why you can receive a 1 or a 0 from your input if you're switching on and off, except, oh, no, that's not a different question. Don't use on and off as string, that's all, use Boolean, okay? Because that's the correct data type for it, and that's why it exists. Right, I have some really good questions which I wanted to mention here. One of the questions was about comments in code. Now you are submitting your code. Okay, no problem, Ahab. You are submitting your code, and any comment you put in that helps the readability of your code, which supports our marking process, is a good thing. So don't put comments on every line. Okay, that absolutely no, that makes it unreadable. Okay, put sort of comment paragraphs at the beginning of methods, for example. That works. That's a very coherent way. So what it would be something like this, right? You would have some kind of thing and say, let's say the method is called method 1, because I've run out of imagination, right? It's called method 1, blah, 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 and you have a header, right? And it won't look as awful as that. And it say, this method does blah, 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 and you explain what it does in a paragraph, and then directly underneath, you'll have your method 1 actual code, if you see what I mean. Now, that is a standard way of doing, so there are a couple of lines at the top. Let's do this, and you'd have some kind of, let's get rid of that. Hang on. People are typing while I'm typing, so let me look at what you've written. So you sort of have a little block at the top, which is a few sentences which summarizes what's going on. Yes, I think that's probably the, you won't lose marks, Robert. No, you won't lose marks for little to no comments, but thinking about this, think about it like this. There is no, Matthew, hang on, Mark, come to your question in a second. It's not that you'll lose marks, but think about this process. Marking your work as fairly as possible, as much effort as you can do to help us give you a good mark, the better. Short 2 or 3 sentences in front of all the important methods, not the get setters, that's pointless. Not even the 2 string methods, because they're fairly generic, but stuff that you've designed and written, it actually helps us say, yeah, that's a good explanation, and it supports us giving you a good grade. Well, okay, so Mark asks, with the Python coursework, Matthew gave us a limit for the amount of lines of code we have. Is there one on this coursework, or should we just do it how we see fit? I've not put any lines of code limit. If you mean for comments, or if you mean just generally for code, Mark, what do you mean? If it's for code, there is no limit, right? But then it's crazy if you just expand that exponentially. Generally for code, we said you should have done it within like 150 lines. Okay, I honestly, I built this, a version of this, and I have a sort of sample version. Honestly, I think it's so subjective. Right, for example, I've been talking to students this week. Yeah, okay, yeah. So Robert, for example, I've had students who have, because they want to parse their helper in different ways, they've ended up splitting it, creating sub things, doing all kinds of interesting and useful stuff for things like scalability. Although it's not directly relevant, I certainly wouldn't mark them down for it, because that shows a foresight and an ability to see how code can be scaled and reused and so on. So because it's reusable code, ideally you're always writing, you might end up writing more. So there is no word count for that. So Christina asks, will we get marked down if we don't use technical terms when describing our code in the video demonstration? I don't know what technical terms you think you need to use. I would just say, you know, as long as you know what a class, object, method, and return is, you know, that's kind of not much more than that, I would have thought. So hopefully, hang on a second, let me just change the font. The dog is now whining at me. Bear with me a second. So I'm not sure what would constitute technical. Right, let me carry on. Here's an interesting question. In the samples that I used, and if we wrapped everything in a console helper, would you prefer our comments to be in the, put some comments in the console? Definitely, yeah. Isn't it better? What's the, that's the point, to explain the code in plain language so no pro. I think Stefan's got the right approach. Take Stefan's answer as the one that you want. Hang on, the dog is whining, as you can hear. Absolutely. I think he said it better than I did. It needs to be played language, really. We you know, we're not trying to play kind of, you know, clever games, right? In the sample code, I think Alex noticed that I had, you see here, I had words placed in the middle of strings and it was all nicely aligned. I actually spent ages doing that, stupidly amount of time. And Alex's question is, should you do it? I would say you could put some effort into it, into how you lay it out, especially for those amongst you who've already built it and are confident with how everything fits together. Make the presentation of the interface as neat and as good as you can. That's all I would say. So I'm not sure if I even need a separate point for that. Okay, so Alex's third question, which I have in an email, I've just written functionality. Can you remember what you asked me in your third question? And then I'll try to answer that. But while you're doing that, okay, so technical report, I think we've talked about. We talked about the video. They kind of cover all the questions we've had. When you come to the drop-in, and Robert will know this because I gave him a bit of a hard time over it, didn't intend to, but when you come, please don't expect us to check your code or check your judgment. It's a really peculiar thing. We really want you to build your confidence and your skill at thinking. Right now, you're not necessarily going to be confident in doing it. That's why working with each other is a sensible way of doing it. Since the company which gave us the project will not use your dashboard, yeah. Well, all I say is just so it's presentable. You don't want a clumsy console, because remember, the company will receive, think about it, even in terms of the scenario given. If you receive it and the interface is bare or almost non-existent, they're going to look at you and say, well, I can't make sense of what you've done. The more useful and how clear your dashboard is, if you think that you can slightly design it to be clearer, yeah, overkill. Yeah, that's fair enough, Robert. Apologies. If you can make it clearer than the version I've given, absolutely feel free to do it. Okay. All your logic needs to be here is what would help me get the, who was it who asked me the question last week? I can't remember who asked me the question. How do I get, you know, the full 10 points for a particular piece or a particular set of marks? And we talked about that. From my point of view, I want to try to give you as much advice. So when you build it, your tech report and your videos support us giving you the best grade we can for it. That's the kind of logic I'd like you to think about, not make it antagonistic in sort of, oh, I better mention this or I have to mention that. No, ask yourself and keep on asking me, if I say this in my tech report or if I put this in my video demo, will it help my grading process? And I think absolutely, that's anything that supports that and makes it clearer. These kind of comments in code, but not excessively, etc. Just needs to be back up our work and show what we've done. Yeah, so the video is actually easy to get the 10 marks. And that is literally just to demonstrate what you've done. And, you know, as a nice sweetener, flick to a piece of code you're particularly proud of as you're demonstrating it. And that kind of answers the question of confidence as well. No, your face doesn't need to be visible in the video. That's a good question. It's just the screen recorded video. Okay. Okay, Stefan, that's a really good question, because you might say, how do we know it's you? What a good question. I don't think you meant to say that. I don't think you meant to, but that's actually opened up. Look, that's a really good question. I don't really want you. You remember we did the videos for the core computing? I think I trusted you to do your videos. I would like to feel I can trust you to do those. If you're really nervous about speaking in your videos, which we did have in the core computing, then make sure you create, I don't know, you layer on some kind of comments. So say, I'm going to test this, and the text appears, so it's clear. Just make sure the video is clear. Don't use a robot voice. Yeah, reader, yeah. Don't use a robot voice. It's much better to have sort of like a little bit of text appear on the video, I'm next going to test the house options. Here's option one, da-da-dum, right? If you're really nervous about speaking and you're not confident, but if you are, I would just encourage you to, right? No, think about it like this. If I tell you what lecturers say when they hear themselves, so we had a lecturer last year who said to me, after the core computing, I think you're being taught by Bola at the moment. She said, Nad, yeah, okay. She was new to that video idea of videoing those huge lecture theatres. She said, just please, can you record it? But can I see it before I, think it's useful? She was so traumatized by hearing her own voice and seeing her present it. She said, Nad, scrub those, please don't record them again. And she's not alone. There are lots of people who really, stutter, say, all that kind of stuff. You can use OBS. A short script is a brilliant idea, Stefan, absolutely brilliant idea. Another one is that I use OBS and hit the pause button now if I hesitate. And it helps those short videos I'm giving back to you. But I don't know if you've noticed, I and ah all the time. And I think it's perfectly fine. If you find that you really don't want to hear yourself and ah, do what Stefan has done, write a script, a mini script kind of thing that you can just use to help guide you, and that will work. You've already got more than other students have at this stage. You've already had a go with the core computing with the video in some form. So I think second time round, you should be better. Yes, that was the word I was looking for, subtitles. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to remember the word. Please feel free to use subtitles. If you don't want to spend all your time stuttering and writing a long script, then just drop in subtitles. In this, I'm now going to demonstrate this. I'll add this, I'll do that. Subtitles appear, they explain what's going on. And I'll say to the other three that I've said this to you, so don't expect everyone to speak. But the default is please try to speak, and just get used to it. Sooner or later you will be out there doing interviews, placements, and all the rest of it. And in this kind of safe environment, it's only us who are assessing you. We're not going to go heavily critical about it and stuff like that. If on YouTube or through editing, as it would take a bit to add subtitles. I think, yeah, I mean, for me, I've just, of all of your lecturers, I don't know who else videos, but I've got past the fact that I might sound a certain way. I'm less worried about how I sound. And as long as the videos are useful to you or clear to you. So all those videos I produce, I worry very little about how awful I might sound, and I never listen to them from that point of view. I just think, is the information clear? Yeah, is the info exactly? Is the good? That's exactly the right logic. Scripts and subtitles will help. At least we can edit it per se. Absolutely, but it's only 10%, right? Theoretically, I was just saying to a couple of students this week, as I think Stefan, I think I remember you saying this last week, it's easier to pass, but trickier to get a higher grade. We will make sure that people who deserve close to 100, last year, I think we had 2 at 98% for the Java coursework. So, it is possible to get very close. All I can say to you, and please bear this thought in mind, some lecturers at university don't believe that students should be able to get 100% in an assessment. Now, that's a controversial and a complex debate, because they always feel that there should always be something more to aspire. I'm of a different view. If I set the parameters of a coursework and you fulfill them and exemplary, then I'm happy to give students 100% or close to 100% as you can. Okay. Right. So I think I'm through all my questions. Let me just very, very quickly get the sheet. So just as a quick reminder and a link, I think you've all got it. I got 100% on my first year. Okay. Yeah. I'm not even sure what that means, but I will put that down to my elderly. Yes, if you get 99%, that's a good point, actually. If you get 99 or 39 or 49 or 15, I don't know who pseudo is. No, that's probably why I'm a bit perplexed. Maybe I shouldn't know. I don't think your chat window appears in the coursework, in the actual video, so I won't say it out loud. Okay, so, oh, Mitchell, Mitchell, one of our students. Yes. Mitchell, I think, got Mitchell, yeah, is a delightful student. I just have to say this. If he ever listens to this video, he knows I think he's a brilliant student because he helps other students and he loves doing it. Yes. So Stefan, just to get back to the point, yeah, Sudo, I remember he told me he was on your Discords helping you. He is. He's a really delightful student. And if anyone can get 100%, it's usually him. Or more, if we could give more. Stefan asks, quick question. If the overall for a unit gets 39, will it be bumped to 40? Yes, so we have a rule that if you get 39, 29, 59, we always round it up to the figure above it. So if you got 69, it would be rounded up to 70. I think that's fairly consistent across every single module and the way the board of examiners work. 68, I do not know, Joseph. That's a very good question. But the logic of the 39 is that it's so close to the border. I mean, is it, you know, if you've got 39.5 and the first is 70, right? 70% and above, and you've got 69.5. It kind of makes sense that we push it into the 70 in some way. And now I'm saying that, assuming that the system is still the same this year, and I don't want to mislead anyone, but that's generally the strategy. We don't like the 9. The 8, I'm afraid, stays, as far as I know, unless it was 68.9, in which case that would round to 69, which would then bounce up. So you can see how it might get slightly out of control. Yes, what we're hoping, Mark, is that it should always be a 20-day return. I've got 4 people helping me mark. My logic is this, okay? We don't want to make the marking process difficult. We don't want to be stumbling through your stuff. We want to rely on your video and your tech report and look at your code. And hopefully you've presented all that stuff nice and clearly so we can say, yep, 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 yep. Maybe a point off here, a couple of points. Do you see what I mean? And so we were hoping to turn that around relatively quickly. So in regards to this coursework, we send a zip with a video code and report, but we also have a Zoom call with you guys. No, you only have a Zoom call with me, guys, unless, Robert, you want one. But we only have a Zoom call if any one of the 4 of us say we're a little bit suspicious that the students, yeah, that's fine. I'm being a bit cheeky. And maybe I shouldn't, apologize. Right. If we have doubts about your work, Robert, you know, this is not going to come up with you because we've already talked about your work. So, you know, you're unlikely to get a video thing, but it's when the student it raises doubt about how the technical reports. I'll give you a good example. It's probably easy to see through an example. In my second year module, I do the same thing. I ask students for a video, a tech report and their code. And the tech report was so general, it didn't connect to the code. And the video, well, was really a jumble. And I was really, really worried. And I looked at the code and the code was so complex and sophisticated. It looked like someone had just grabbed the whole thing from GitHub and dropped it in. So I contacted the student and spoke to the student, who got very upset and admitted that a friend helped them. That phrase there. And I said, oh, goodness me. I said, that's the problem. The drop-in tomorrow, no, the drop-in tomorrow I've kind of dropped, Danny, because the 4 sessions seem sufficient at the moment. Maybe next week I'll put it back in. If you have, let's just very briefly mention worksheets for anyone who's here and thinking, I still have worksheets. Because of the awkward place we're in with lockdown, with the computer IT system going and all that kind of stuff, anyone who has worksheets hanging over for the Java, just email me and I'll arrange to mark your worksheets. And I'm happy to do it, but let's not let it run over the next week and a bit. Otherwise, it's going to interfere with your coursework and all the other pressures you have. Okay. Yeah, although it's on your timetable, Danny, it's not an official drop-in, and we're probably not going to do it. Tomorrow, I will send an email out. We will do 2. Matthew's updated the learning catalytics. We'll do both last 2 sessions in one session in one go if we can squeeze all the questions in. Maybe I'll make the last one really, really quite simple for you. Okay, are we at the end of our questions, folks? Anything else? Okay, so okay, Will, can I say this out? I know you just sent it to me privately. Okay, let's just say people have asked me and asked us during the drop-ins. Can I just answer this question? For those who are struggling to write the code, the actual help that you want to do is you want to do week 7. Once you've done week 7, you've got 20% of your coursework already built. If you've got a console helper, you've got 5%. Just grab it, paste it in, and use it, right? If you've built a dashboard, that's 5%. If you build week 7 and then rename Smart Light Switch to Smart Plug and Smart Building to Smart Home, you've got the beginnings of your code. Use week 7. If you really struggle with coding, contact Shah. Shah has given more sessions in the next few weeks, and she will sit with you and code. If you really, really struggle, then please speak to me and I will do my best to find a strategy. But if you've got to do the week 7 thing that I've said first, and you've got to trust that if you do some of the basics, you know, and I'm talking to students who might be struggling and not that confident. I don't want to make it impossible for you to pass, but you have to do a minimal amount. Sorry, Mark, you've got a question. With the learning catalytics and worksheets, when will we get the result, or will we just find out when we find the grade for the module? I think that's a really good question. Matthew is, once we get the last learning catalytics done, for the worksheets, I mean, I'm reluctant to do this, but you know, I have a spreadsheet with your worksheet values in there, and I could, in theory, just, but then people will inundate me with questions about them. If you're really, really anxious and really, really freaking out, don't expect the turnaround to be quick, but I can just copy and paste the line out of the worksheet with all of your numbers. But we're not using every worksheet. We're only using the top X. And at the moment, Matthew is recalibrating that to make sure that you get the best, your best ones, rather than all of them -1. So he wants to do that again. I think in the initial video, he said the top 10. I think we talked about this. Yes, learning catalytics, hopefully tomorrow will be the last one. Let's hope it works. I will email out just to remind people to come, and let's have some catalytics bingo as well for it. So Will, I know you sent that to me privately. Sorry, I've kind of said your name again. If you do what I've said about week 7, and with week 7, we can help you with tons of code. In fact, this week, one of the students was doing their week 7, and I could chat to them about their code because it's not the coursework, it is implicitly. Yeah, originally, Hubert, it was the top 10 worksheets from both Java and Python, but I think Matthew wants to recalibrate it. He might make it the top 9, for example, which is an advantage to you because you'll just end up with better grades for that particular thing. Okay, but he and I need to have that chat about it, and how that works out for you. Okay, any other questions, folks? This sheet is already on Moodle. Hopefully it's reasonably coherent. The video will go in the FAQ, and I'll put it in the top of the website as well and add it to that playlist, so it's all available to you as well. Oh yes, I was going to, hang on, bear with me a second. That sheet, let me just give you the link again. Don't forget, I think that sheet has been distributed already out. The week 2 links are here. Feel free to add your names to it. Is the Java test going to be similar to learning Kata? That's exactly what I'm hoping to do. If I'm being honest with you, what I'm going to do is, see, the issue for me is this. Okay, I'd like to be able to test you, but test you in a way that you could stare at the question and think it through and it would make sense and you could answer it. I don't want to make it a memory test, if that makes sense to you. I dislike memory tests enormously because I think in the end they just test your memory and it just goes in your short-term memory and out. It's much better to test your understanding. So I'll try to pick questions and try to frame them that doesn't require you to just scrabble around and just find an answer based on memory. That gets you just to think about it. Matthew tried the same thing for the Python test. Does anyone remember how they felt about the Python tests? Did they find that okay? Okay. Yeah. So he showed it to Alex and me. Okay. He showed it to Alex and me, and I'll try to use a similar strategy to him. Okay. To allow it to be as kind of, so you can exercise your thinking skill and think, okay, he's saying this logically, it doesn't make sense for that, etc. It doesn't make sense. That's got to be right. So if I can encourage that process in the test, that would be better rather than I've forgotten. I don't know how. Let me quickly Google it. Because what's the value of that? None for me, none whatsoever. Okay. Yeah, Nick, the issue, did Matthew, I think I remember, Nick, at the time you did ask, could you see your test? Did Matthew not get back to you about that and explain that he doesn't publish the test because he reuses it? I think that might be the reason. And that, Nick, may be a problem that you find. Yeah, I think that's an issue well you'll have at university because we end up readapting our material, and so we don't end up, giving those things out. Okay, so from your point of view, when you make a mistake, yeah, when you make a mistake, you want to know what kind of mistakes you've made. I'll think about it when I think about the Java coursework, the test, which I think is it not the 25th of May or something? I think I did see it on the calendar. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet. Yeah, so I will think about that for you. Okay, so I don't seem to have any more questions. Shall we stop for the moment? No problem at all. Thank you for the questions, and I hope it was useful again. And I will ping out an email to say tomorrow, hopefully, fingers crossed, learning catalytics won't mess us about. Matthew did change it. Good. As long as it is useful to you, certainly no benefit to hearing my voice. And okay, I'm going to click. Am I going to click on it and regret clicking on that, Robert? Okay, so hopefully the notes are clear. And thank you, Adriano. Very good question for that one. I think lots of people will find that very useful, you spelling that out. Okay, yeah, so I'll close up then for the moment and speak to you all or see whoever and needs to see me next week. I've clicked on your link and I've got really bad internet connection, so it's dragging out opening that image. See you tomorrow, folks.